in the embrace of Messmer's flame. O lightless creature, wilt thou be? Take me in the jaws. Mongrel intruder.
Messmer built a powerful army of fire knights during his reign. One of those knights was the Voidreaper, which infiltrated his army to destroy it from the inside out. Why? Well, collecting the souls of Messmer's army one by one gave this mysterious individual extra powers. Every soul fueled the fire inside of him and made him even more powerful. See, the Voidreaper is a cunning and sly individual, as he climbed the ranks of Messmer's army purely for the pursuit of power, to the point that he manipulated the Serpent King and his decision-making, unknown to Messmer himself, of course. Messmer fell for his lies and trusted this individual so much he made him even the captain of his Fire Knights, as indicated by the special helmet that he wears. This friend did in fact keep the serpent at bay and hold its power in check, but not for the reasons that you or Messmer might think. Who is the Voidreaper really then? If you would look beyond the deceptive armor that he wears, you would find nothing. This peculiar entity seems to be a demonic amalgamation, spawned directly from the deepest pits of hell, with an agency to reap as many souls as possible, to obtain unimaginable power. And where better to start than Messmer's huge legion, right? Especially because being one with the hottest imaginable fires has made him master Messmer's fire even better than Messmer himself, but also every other imaginable flame-related weapon, wizardry, and techniques, including the type of fire tied to Midra, the Lord of Frenzied Flame. The Voidreaper uses an extremely powerful weapon that utilizes two Ashes of War that synergize extremely well with each other and has mastered 9 different incantations. A lot of the Voidreaper's kit is in fact obtained in the Land of the Shadow. Today's build optimizes for all of those things at the same time. How the video is then structured is that it will become apparent what the Voidreaper's full build is in chronological order of how the Voidreaper destroyed the DLC zone. Right away when we enter the Land of Shadow, we need to hunt down Fire Knight Quilline, well, at least his invader form, which will await you patiently at the Church of the Crusade right here. You can easily get here right away by passing Castle Ensis like this and then just move on towards the church. There you will find this Fire Knight, and here it becomes apparent what our powerful Reaper's first incantation is: Frenzied Burst. Frenzied Burst is from the base game and has insane range. It is also insanely good versus these type of humanoid enemies, as it can apply madness on them, so we definitely include it for that use case. With Frenzied Burst damage and range, you can make quick work of Quilline, resulting into us obtaining a very powerful Ash of War right away: Flame Skewer. Now we just need a weapon for this incantation, and for that purpose we move ahead to the Shadow Keep. The main entrance of the Shadow Keep is, as you may or may not know, guarded by a huge hippo. Well, not any longer. Meet the Voidreaper's second incantation: Burn O Flame. Burn O Flame is yet another monstrous incantation from the base game that quickly deals with enemies that tend to move around a lot or have a big hitbox. That means for our hippo friend, well, let's just say he won't live for a very long time. The damage that you deal with this incantation is absolutely nuts, and the fight is over faster than it started, really. In the Shadow Keep, go ahead and find yourself a Fire Knight buddy. The guys in red, basically, you really can't miss them, and an easy way to farm these guys is by going to the storehouse first floor Site of Grace. Right next to the Site of Grace, take the elevator down and do a little dance while you're going down, and buff yourself in the meantime with Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength. You get a lot of time to do so, which by the way are going to be our incantation number 3 and 4 for this build. As you know, staple incantations and buffs that increase our damage, defenses, and stamina regeneration, so they obviously are going to make the cut here too. Then just kill the Fire Knight from a distance with, say, Frenzied Burst, or kill him up front with any sort of your preference, and just farm these knights over and over by utilizing the elevator and the nearby Site of Grace. You can in fact do this really fast, as after you kill these knights, just tap the elevator for it to go up, then immediately load back to the storehouse first floor Site of Grace, and the elevator will in fact be at the top again without you having to fully ride it. It is a nice little trick to make the farm a lot faster, and you can right away use it again. Do this little procedure over and over, basically keep killing those knights till you get the Fire Knight's Greatsword, and preferably 2, and you'll understand why later on. See, the Fire Knight's Greatsword is an absolute amazing weapon that gets really high attack rate, devastating, and imbuing it with the Flame Art affinity gives it a ton of fire damage in the process of doing so too, while making it a mostly faith scaling weapon, giving you the possibility to combo it with powerful incantations. It is even specified in the description of the weapon that this affinity is the affinity to go. But that is not where the power of this weapon lies solely. It is in fact also that you can infuse it with some very powerful Ashes of War that synergize extremely well with its fire damage background and size. It has also then great poise damage, an amazing moveset, and overall it gets really high sustained damage output due to amazing synergy with talismans, crystal tears, and armor. But more on that later on. So the flame skewer we just picked up, put it on this weapon right away. It's going to be one of our 2 main Ashes of Wars in this build. And to show you what I really mean, well, let's right ahead go to the Dancing Lion and take him on. You can see here how outrageous flame skewer on this weapon in an optimized setup gets. In very quick succession too, by the way, you do so much damage, it is not even funny. And while you do so, you get great hyper armor too. As you can basically see, I'm just ignoring what the lion is doing, so the damage is in a lot of cases going to be guaranteed. The Dancing Lion gets pretty much completely wrecked, and as you might have just observed, Flame Skewer basically has 2 parts to it. The part where you skewer your enemy from a down to upwards motion in the style of, say, the base game's Giant Hunt Ash of War, which does a lot of damage. But then you can follow up that initial deadly attack with a charge attack input to spew out all this fire, and it's a bit like how the second part of Flaming Strike from the base game works, and this combination of the 2 parts leads to a lot of potential damage in mere seconds, as you saw on the Dancing Lion. But what also happens is when you use Flame Skewer is that you coat your weapon in fire 2 for 95 extra fire damage, which is of course really nice bonus damage that will also go through all the modifiers to our fire damage output with our setup. Hence why I would recommend to always start any fight with this Ash of War to get that bonus going as fast as possible. And even if you would only use it for that purpose or as an opener, well, let's just talk about the Fire Knight's Greatsword moveset, which does in fact have an amazing moveset too. Let me demonstrate that to you on Rellana. See, the Fire Knight's Greatsword is a colossal sword in fact, but it's a lightweight colossal sword with the associated moveset. So it compares to, say, the Zweihander or the Godslayer's Greatsword from the base game, and with that has a sense of extra flexibility for the otherwise usual slower feeling colossal swords of the game. The moveset gives you great jump attacks, charge attacks, poke and reach, and normal attacks, which leads into you just having a type of attack for any scenario really, and stance breaking your enemies very fast, because as you know, colossal swords build up poise damage very quickly. As you see right here in this fight, utilizing the various types of attacks, depending on if I need quick damage, a lot of poise damage in one go, or just a good poke attack with, say, the charge attack, it completely breaks Rellana the second we enter the arena and gives you that quick W. Now you might say, we are so heavily invested in fire, wouldn't fire resistances then be a weakness to this build? No, because our stance breaking capabilities is something we can always fall back onto. Look, let me just show you versus Commander Gaius, the most hated boss of all time, why we have insane stance breaking capabilities and just an amazing flow of quick damage, resulting into the notion that with this build and our weapon we will always have a solution to any problem. Commander Gaius gets yet again completely destroyed with our weapon and Ash of War within mere seconds, like we didn't even have to fight for it. It is just peak gaming really, and another boss destroyed. Now Commander Gaius is right next to the Shadowkeep, and the Shadowkeep has a lot of good stuff for the Voidreaper. We get 2 out of 3 Messmer incantations here, and the ones actually worth using. More on that in a second. The Flame Spear Ash of War is going to be our other Ash of War that I hinted at before, which you can find on the 6th floor. And both the Flame Skewer and Flame Spear Ash of War supplement each other so incredibly well, it would be weird not to run them in tandem. I will be using the Flame Spear versus Messmer himself to show you why. Here I also start with Flame of the Fell God, which is going to be our 5th incantation in the roster. See, Flame of the Fell God is an excellent incantation for preemptive use and casting, especially when, say, your enemy gives you some time to build up damage essentially, for example because they're winding up an attack of their own. Flame of the Fell God then gets shot out when you're casting it and lingers and tracks onwards to your enemy in the meantime, giving you a great opener and good damage. But it also leaves this pool of fire which staggers your enemy as well. In the case of Messmer, it makes him do the stanky leg and lets him go on a dancing voyage. And these staggers delay his attacks and in turn give you great room and momentum to combo it with one of your attacks. So we're using that to combo it with our Flame Spear in this case, and here you see the destructive power of Flame Spear. It basically does a ton ton of damage and has a ton of reach too, in addition to it also building up poise damage quickly. Now you can see why we're using Flame Spear here over Flame Skewer. Flame Spear is an excellent option when you just need that extra poke and reach versus enemies that have a smaller hitbox or that are harder to hit because they have a tendency to go aerial. Messmer then gets stance broken quickly with Flame Spear in phase 2, giving us huge momentum, and the moments that he's recovering from either his snake attacks or when he's starting to prepare for his next attacks are great moments to target him with Flame Spear. Then ultimately you would stab him to death like that in a true spear-esque fiery fashion. Flame Spear now kinda resembles Impaling Thrust from the base game, it's just a lot more fiery and thus has better synergy with fire setups, and gives you more reach too aside from the lunge, as it in fact shoots off a projectile and most importantly looks a lot better too. It's an amazing Ash of War. It gives you a similar buff to your weapon damage too, like Flame Skewer, because it coats your weapon as well. This buff however lasts longer, up to 40 seconds, so keep that in mind. Whether you want to use Flame Spear or Flame Skewer is then going to be mostly dependent on two things in my opinion, but both are excellent deadly Ashes of Wars and you can't go wrong with either. But when do we give preference to use one of the two over the other? Well, I would personally recommend to use Flame Spear for more precision versus say smaller targets and when you need the extra reach and poke like illustrated before, and Flame Skewer when you need the quick, bursty, spammable and chainable damage. Definitely use them in conjunction, hence why I also said to farm 2 Fire Knight's Great Sword so you can quickly swap around between the two and you can infinitely farm those Great Swords anyways, so why not, right? An excellent example for where I would definitely prefer to use Flame Spear is the Fingering Boss, where you can use its cutting edge accuracy and precision and reach to target its heart and really pinpoint it to do absolutely amazing damage, and it feels so satisfying to get this attack off and just lunge so deep inside their weak points to quickly obliterate them. Aside from the damage, you then also build incredible poise damage, so with only a few casts the Fingering Boss will already be stance broken. You can go for the critical hit here definitely, but I would just prefer to use another Flame Spear here during this period, as being stance broken gives you a damage buff to your non-repose damage too. And then another Flame Spear, it's really addicting, and as I told you, this Ash of War shoots off a projectile too that is absolutely amazing versus bosses that at points you can't reach because they're going up, for example, like this guy. So you can finish him off quite easily with the projectile. Overall, I might just say that Flame Skewer is great for the first part, give or take, of the DLC, while Flame Spear dominates the second part. But obviously, there's an element of preference here too. Now, with Messmer defeated and visiting the Shadowkeep, we can finally get to Messmer incantations that are absolutely amazing. In total, there are 3 Messmer incantations: Messmer's Orb, Fire Serpent, and Rain of Fire. Rain of Fire can immediately be disqualified in its current form, because it's really just a troll spell with no tracking, no good area coverage, no damage, no poise damage, no utility, while having a high faith requirement and costing quite some FP. Even when your target is being completely stationary. It's kinda shocking, to be honest. Oh. Wait, who's that on the phone? No way, it's Miyazaki himself! Rain of Fire just got buffed? Oh, it actually deals decent damage now and melts bosses with ease. Look at that damage on this Earth Tree Avatar. This thing is busted! Oh, wait, the honeymoon phase is already over. Yeah, it's much better now damage-wise and can definitely be useful versus stationary targets or as an opener, but overall in fast-paced boss fights, the boss will just, move away from the zone that the Rain of Fire targets, so it's just at most going to be viable for very niche use cases, but for its intended purposes, it really can't compete with Burn of Flame, so just use that over this. What is also terrible, by the way, is you still not being subscribed to me and not liking this video. How is that even possible? Well, do that right now, thank you. Also, check out my Patreon if you want to support the channel, and I also have written guides there of all my builds and videos. It's truly amazing. Thank you for your contributions to the channel. The other 2 Messmer incantations, however, both obtained in the Shadowkeep, of which one after defeating Messmer, which we just did, are actually really good. Let's start off with Fire Serpent. This is an absolutely excellent FP efficient bread and butter type of spell. When you're in the open world, it can very smoothly and quickly take care of everything trying to bother you. It's an amazing addition to your Ashes of Wars that can one-tap a lot of the enemies in the open world too in a closer proximity. However, it is also excellent in boss fights, mostly due to its ridiculous tracking, and it's synergizing very well with the rest of our build. A great example for this is the Shadow Tree avatar. And yes, this is apparently pronounced as Shadow Tree and not Scatter Tree. Who knew, right? The tracking of this thing is absolute nuts. You might have difficulties hitting its weak spot, its head, with like a regular weapon or other spells, but with Fire Serpent you can make it so that it tracks instantly to its head for a lot of juicy damage quickly. For example, after quickly dealing with this guy in phase 1, he did this move in phase 2 at the start, and there's nothing in the game that would really still track onto its head if you would shoot it off, but the Fire Serpent does the impossible and still hits him for several thousands of damage. It is a great spell, and just spamming the spell, I completely obliterated this Shadow Tree avatar. In phase 3, it's pretty much a gift when he stays still for a few seconds, as you can barrage Fire Serpents like it's nothing, and his head being above you, well, it doesn't really matter due to the tracking. Aside from this amazing spell destroying bosses with their own arena, for open field bosses on the other hand where you can mount up, it's actually also a great tool, as you can safely chain cast it from your horse and it will just track onto your target even if both of you are moving while you're going on your little rodeo. Provides you a very safe and consistent way to take care of these type of bosses too. Now for our other pickup, Messmer's Orb, well, that one is excellent too. Probably my new favorite incantation of the DLC. It can function as an amazing AoE tool, allowing you to clear areas very quickly and efficiently, and does so in style. What I personally find peak style about this incantation, however, is when you actually use it to dodge the enemy's attack, like in this example. It is peak anime. And then combining it with Fire Serpent is great too, as the mobs in the open world aren't always clustered together. In boss fights then, I have completely destroyed Midra with this spell, and the Midra fight is a great example of how powerful this spell here can get, as in this fight it becomes perfectly clear at what this spell truly excels at. It basically functions as a gap closer to your target, and when you latch onto your enemy, it deals absolutely disgusting damage. The only problem here might actually be getting the damage off, as you can get interrupted mid-animation. But versus a lot of enemies that don't jump or jump a lot, it can have a really high rate of landing successfully, and in the process of doing so, dodges a lot of their attacks too, which, let me reiterate again, looks fantastic. But this spell also comes with great poise damage. As you see, I'm stance breaking Midra with only 2 orbs each, which then combos extremely well with our weapon and our high attack rating on this thing. You can do this over and over versus Midra, basically making it a really fun fight. Overall, the damage, the poise damage, the aerial dodgings and its visuals make this an excellent S+ tier spell that you just need to have in your kit for this build or any fire build really. And then after Midra has gotten plenty of balls in his face, you can just use your weapon to finish him off quickly. Now we haven't used Messmer's incantations in tandem, and this is also a great option to approach the different fights. For example, the Romina fight, aka the SCD giving Scorpion, where you can use Fire Serpent from a distance at the start till this cockroach approaches you. Then you can start getting those Messmer's orbs and really measure balls in his face, resulting into a deadly cocktail of red ball explosiveness, and like Midra, this guy ain't stance broke resistant either. Nope, we stance break this thing very quickly again with the Messmer incantation only wrath, and it results into that juicy Fire Knight's greatsword being slashed upon this devil's deformed body with precise critical annihilation. Then when he recovers from the critical hit and starts doing his STD giving antics, it is time to Fire Serpent him from a distance. This is another excellent use case of where the Fire Serpent prevails, when your opponent is telling you, "Don't come near me." Ultimately chaining this into Messmer's Orb will result into a fluent and fast kill really. Just repeat the first part in the second part of the fight to get this guy's HP bar down faster than the number of players using Rain of Nothing currently. Now I said 9 incantations, so what are the final 2 incantations that we use with this build? On Endurable Frenzy and the new DLC Frenzied Flame spell, Midra's Flame of Frenzy, which is also the only Frenzied Flame spell added to the game. These spells are pretty much identical. They have the same purpose: you spew out a bunch of madness all around you and take down your enemy's HP rather quickly with every beam hitting them. Midra's Flame of Frenzy looks cooler and is visually more appealing than Unendurable Frenzy, and you can definitely use it with great success here and there, but Unendurable Frenzy does remain king in the Madness Big Burst department. Reason being is that it's more FP efficient, it builds up madness on yourself way slower, and it just has better damage, poise damage, and reach. Bayle is a great example of where the spell performs absolutely amazing, especially when you put the Cerulean Hidden Tear in your Flask of Wondrous Physic, where you then can keep spewing out madness and not worry about FP for a good time, basically all the way till you proc madness on yourself. The damage gets ridiculous real fast, as you can see, and this is mostly thanks to the fact that you can position yourself beneath dragons and big targets with an asymmetrical hitbox and do really well with this incantation. Aside from the huge burst, you get a lot of poise damage in too, as you can see with the relatively quick stance break that I got, and that of course can be yet again paired with our Super Saiyan weapon for a lot of damage. Hit them with a Flame Spear here too for a nice combo, and you can see we already made Bayle lose most of his HP. And this incantation is yet another incantation like pretty much our entire kit of spells that synergizes extremely well with our weapon. You can keep using it at the end of the fight too, but also with Flame Spear here directly targeting this big beast enormous head, because well, let's say doing that we can get rid of Bayle very quickly as well. Now there's just one more important boss in the DLC zone that we didn't mention yet, the final boss, Radonsky. After you initially dodging his purple dash attack, I would chain it right away with a Flame Spear right up his bum to give him a fiery welcome. And I would just go full Flame Spear here right off the bat. Its hyper armor will allow you to poise through various of his motions. You can see here however 2 attempts that fell because both the upwards and downwards slash are in fact not hyper armor able, if that's a word. But here again I use Flame Spear. You can in fact motion through his poke attack and blood flame spewings and get the damage in. You will trade of course, but that's where we got them potions from the local shady black market for. Chuck those addicting things to get your HP back and then Flame Spear some more. His attack that makes the ground look like rubble and will shatter rocks against you can also be motioned through. So another Flame Spear here it is. Dodge his purple rocks by letting them track to one singular spot and then follow it up with 2 dodges. And if you did it exactly like me without 0 deviation, basically getting 4 Flame Spears in phase 1, you will get the stance break now at the start of phase 2. Jump, hit him, and he will bow down. The mighty one goes faster on his knees in the setup than your local Slurpee machine needing some pennies for more coke. Crit into another Flame Spear and you'll have his HP bar practically reduced to the bit where it spells his name. Now his name is really fancy, so it is still a bit of HP, but those final bits can be done relatively safely by chugging an Iron Jar Aromatic if you don't want to bother with the developer's manic episode when they programmed this fight. Chain that Iron Jar Aromatic then, which makes you slower than a turtle, but at least gives you that silver paint all over your body with 2 or 3 burn of flames, let's say, which will at this point where your core buffs have probably fallen off still deal very good damage. And the Iron Jar Aromatic will pretty much give you 6.9 million points of poise, so you can poise through everything Radon is spastically doing here, while burn of flaming this heretic back to Khaled or something more lore accurate. You fill it in. Easy done so. If you struggle with this fight, put the Opaline Heart Tear in the flask, run the Golden Braid Talisman, and use Black Flame Protection, which we can cast of course as a Faith build, to get your defenses up as much as possible. As you see, the Voidreaper beats the Elden Ring DLC like it's a joke. So how do we exactly get this damage and success then? Let's go through our setup. Starting off with our talismans. We run the Godfrey icon here since a lot of the spells and our Flame Spear has a chargeable component, the Fire Scorpion Charm since we are all about fire damage, the Dragon Crest Great Shield for the incredible sustain, and finally Alexander's Shard to make our Ashes of Wars even more powerful. How come we deal so much damage though with everything we do? Well, ask our flask, I would say. We run the Flaming Shrouding Correct here of course for the buff to fire damage, which is literally every single aspect of our kit, but the developers thought it would be wise to add another crystal tier that also buffs fire damage in the form of the Oily Crack tier. Yes, by oiling up your enemies you deal another 20% extra damage with our setup, hence why you saw such ridiculous numbers all across the video with my build. How do you oil up your enemies though? Well, just drink the flask and get near enemies at any point in time during the fight, which will happen all the time since we have a melee component to the build, and voila, they are oiled up as indicated by all that drippiness. What makes our damage spike even more out of control is then of course our armor set, starting off with our amazing Winged Serpent helmet, which was specifically made for both Flame Spear and Flame Skewer. It boosts both Ashes of Wars with a whopping 10%, which is crazy good for a single armor piece that provides you an unconditional buff. Then the Fire Knight armor chest piece, which boosts our Messmer's incantations with 5% as well. Both the helm and the chest piece are obtained in the Shadow Keep, by the way, making it a very important and centric place for building this build, as a lot of stuff is obtained there. Then for the other 2 pieces we wield Rakshasa's Gauntlets, which grants us another extra 2% damage, and the Scaled Greaves. Now I chose these 2 pieces because they mesh incredibly well with the Fire Knight chest piece, one connecting red on red while the other gray silver on gray gray/silver, in addition to my choice here providing us over 50 poise, so giving us the ability to resist interrupting hits. Aside from the offensive properties, this combination then thus also gives us great defenses as well. Regarding stats, the Voidreaper has 70 Fate, 22 Strength and 18 Dexterity, giving us a whopping nearly 900 AR for our Fire Knight's Greatsword in the setup, and makes our incantations hit very hard, since we will almost be fully soft capped on Faith. Then 60 Vigor for the sustain, fully soft capping on it as well, and 24 Endurance and 19 Mind for the stamina, the equip load management and comfortable FP to cast our incantations and Ashes of Wars respectively. This is for a level 150 build. For higher levels you can just get more Fate, more Endurance and more FP. The seal for casting that I'm then using is the Fire Knight seal, since it gives our Messmer's incantations a 15% damage boost, making it the best seal for those type of incantations while also scaling our other incantations very well. And since the Messmer incantations are new thanks to the DLC, I have prio'd them. If you don't care about those type of incantations, then the Giant Seal alternatively will be the best option to boost incantations like the earlier mentioned Burn of Flame and Flame of the Fell God. You can still also, by the way, run more of the Fire Giant Pyromancy rated spells that I didn't actually use, like Giant's Flame Take Thee and Flame Fall upon them with that seal too, and have great results in addition. Of course, but I do be liking that Messmer's incantations, and the seal actually gives really good all-round scaling for our non-Messmer related incantations for a catalyst that is in fact tied to a certain school with 333 scaling at 80 faith. And with that, everything you now need to know about the Voidreaper and my build for it has been revealed. With all this information, have fun, and after you've finished being the Voidreaper, make also sure to check out my Grizzly Bear build, the strongest strength build in the DLC.